I'm a Jamaican from the Bronx, which means sometimes, not all the time, I have an ego. Mm-hmm. And so I got to balance that out a little bit as far as, is this me or is this you? And so what I've learned to do in that process is surrender. And we don't talk about surrender often enough. So it's not just that I have this idea, that I have the business plan, and that I have investors.
Welcome to Behind the Work, the show where we dive deep into the business, life, and careers of people doing some amazing things in the world. I'm your host, Jessica Santana, and I'm bringing you the stories behind the sexy and unsexy parts of success. So whether you're working at a company, building your business, or you're just trying to level up, this is for you. At Behind the Work, we believe that we all have to go up together, so make sure you're tapped in. Today's episode actually is really near and dear to my heart because it's an episode that I'm doing with one of my greatest friends in the entire world, Stacyann Russell. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you guys know that me and Stacyann have the best time. We create songs with one another. We laugh with one another. A lot of times we listen to reggae with one another, and we just really ball out. But what a lot of people don't know is that Stacyann, she really is that girl. So I'm going to read a little bit of a bio because it is a privilege to have her on Behind the Work. So Stacyann Russell, she is the founder and CEO of the Daraja Collective, an agency focused on bringing budding entrepreneurs the tools and resources they need to bring their ideas to market. By connecting engineering and entrepreneurship, the Daraja Collective serves early-stage entrepreneurs and communities where technical and social innovation will have the most significant impact. Their work focuses on establishing technology enterprises that bolster underserved communities and operating as the lynchpin in the startup ecosystem by being the bridge between ideas and sustainable business models. She's so good. Stacyann holds a BS in Industrial and Systems Engineering from The Ohio State University. You know, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? An MS in Engineering Management from the George Washington University and an MBA from the USC School of Business. Stacyann is from Jamaican descent. She was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, unfortunately, and she spent several years in Cleveland, Ohio, and currently resides both in Los Angeles, California, and Atlanta, Georgia. So everyone, welcome Stacyann to the show. Applause.
Hey, Jess, now that you done put all my coordinates out.
I know, right? All right, so Stacyann.
Yes, ma'am.
Stacyann. So I like to give some context into how I've actually met a lot of the guests on my show. So Stacyann, I met her when I moved to LA in 2019. I had moved to LA in 2019 to launch America on Tech's second office. It was part of our regional expansion plan to the West Coast. And it just so happened that we met through our mutual friend, Layla, who she invited me to a hip hop cypher. And then Stacyann was like, all right, we can bring the Puerto Rican to the hip hop cypher. And no, I'm playing. But she was like, yeah, we could bring her to the hip hop cypher. But we had such a good time. And what's interesting is that the day that I met Stacyann, she thought it was going to be like a 4-hour hangout session. No, Stacyann and I were together for a good 24 hours straight because we hung out from like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Then we took a little nap and went to brunch somewhere in North Hollywood. And it was such a good time. Stacyann had planned an escape from my life at that time, but she really couldn't get rid of me. She really couldn't get rid of me.
Most people would call that a hostage situation.
I don't think so. I don't think it was a hostage situation. I actually think, honestly, it was the best 24 hours of your life. And that is why I'm still in your life today.
Well, shout out to you.
Well, shout out to me.
Shout out to you.
No, but all jokes aside, honestly, what I really have always loved about Stacyann is that she's just not a CEO. She's not just a founder. She is a very faith-based person. You know, there's nothing that you can do with Stacyann that doesn't involve God. And I remember when I had moved to LA, I was just restarting my spiritual connection and my relationship with God. And she's always been a sounding board for me on a personal level on how we can really be building our dreams, but still centering our faith in the process. And so today's episode is really focused on giving entrepreneurs an understanding that you do not have to choose between God and your business. You do not have to be choosing between God and your dreams. They actually need to coexist with one another. So with that being said, before we start talking about our faith, I want to give Stacyann the opportunity to give us a little bit of insight into little Stacyann from the block in the Bronx. What were her dreams and her aspirations? Tell us a little bit about her.
Ace from the block. Thank you, Jessica, for such an amazing intro and validating the hostage situation that I definitely was a part of. Thank God for deliverance. When it comes to young Stace, like I'm the child of immigrants. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about the things that were going through my head, it was really just excellence. Excellence matters. If anyone has been, grown up in America, child of particularly Caribbean immigrants, is like, yo, we got you here, do your thing. And so that's what I did. When I stepped into a room, I was going to be the baddest at it. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was it. I think maybe in middle school is when I realized I wanted to be an engineer. But that's mainly because I was like taking stuff apart. And I put them back together correctly most of the time. Not all the time, but don't ask my mama about that. And so we went from there. But I knew I had like a passion for teaching. Every time I would take these, tests about what your career should be, teaching would always come up. But I wanted to do things that were challenging, and I wanted to be able to create things from scratch. Like, I didn't want anyone to say, hey, you can't do this because of a specific constraint. It's like, let's break the laws of physics.
Okay. All right. So, you hinted at really coming from an immigrant family. I'm Puerto Rican. We Caribbean people. I think people don't realize like how important our faith is in our culture, right? Like you can't do anything culturally without God. You can't go to school without God. You can't get dressed without God. You can't go eat a plate of dinner without God, right? Like so much of it is very faith oriented. And so what do you think was true about your childhood that allowed you to really not see God as like a chore, but something that you wanted to center in your life?
I mean, God was always there. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you hear your parents pick up the phone, they picked up the phone and they said, praise the Lord. Like they didn't say hello. They said, praise the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so for me, God has always been there. You know how it was, especially now you can go to church and it's like, okay, we get in, we get out. It's about an hour and a half. Back in the day, right? It's like you were there from Sunday at 9 a.m. Maybe you made it back on time by 6 for dinner. And then you had Bible study. You had like youth night. There was a lot of reasons to be in church. And so for me, God was just always there. And I think that helped because there was nothing that I could do or say to think that he wouldn't be there. Like he was there even when I was throwing a temper tantrum. He was there even when I got all A's. And so he was there.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that because one of the things I felt when I was growing up was that a lot of people who were around me, they didn't have faith ingrained in the design of their days, right? And I remember, in elementary school or in middle school or in high school, a lot of times, like actually being made fun of, like for having to go to church on Sundays. Like, everyone is outside, they playing double dutch and, they on the monkey bars, but like you got your Sunday dress on and you about to go to church, and it's like, dang, I kind of want to be outside, right? And so what do you think were the things early on that your parents did or your family did to make you feel like God was much more fun than the monkey bars and much more fun than double dutch? Because I don't know that everyone grows up with that kind of centering in their life.
I don't even know that I looked at it as fun. Right?
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It wasn't bad, but it just wasn't fun. It was non-negotiable. Is what it was. And so it was one of those things. You knew where the Russell girls were at on Sunday. There was no question. Don't come ring the doorbell. They're not coming out to play on Sundays. They're there. And so it was very much ingrained. And I appreciate that, because I think what it taught me is that there are certain things that you do because it's good. It's good for you. It's good to you. And whether it's fun or not is your business. That's a personal problem. But it is very much a thing that you do because it's foundational and it's required for you to sustain throughout the day, and very much in my mind, it's like, you get this right. Then when you have the spelling test in school, or somebody's trying to start beef with you in recess, like it'll sustain you from day to day, right? At least it made sense at 6.
Because you're choosing God instead of violence is what you're saying.
I mean, nah. I'm just saying, when I choose violence, God will be with me. No, that's not, I made it up.
You made it up. All right. So, you started hinting a little bit about your interest and career in engineering, right? So before you became the CEO of the Daraja Collective, you were in charge of building and designing systems as an engineer. And I think people don't realize that when you are given the power to design and create things, that actually in and of itself is also spiritual, right? It's taking things that are living in your head and then having to manifest them in a real world format, right? In a way that is digestible to people that have to consume what you've just designed and built. And so tell me a little bit about the ways in which you see the intersections of your actual career discipline and your faith.
That's so much pressure. I don't know that when I was building, I was just like, dear Lord, impose upon me what this secondary waste system should look like, right?
But to be fair, right, we always talk about that even though you can build something does not mean that you should build something. And that is why I ask you this, because there are people that have the ability to build and design, but they're not always thinking critically like, should I actually build and design this even if I have to? So where does faith live in the process of you designing and building things? And when do you say, yes, this is something I should do, and no, this is something I shouldn't do?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I feel like it's a hot topic these days. We're out here deploying technologies all day as if it's candy, and I'm like, no, don't do it. So I think for me, the first thing is I was actually trained to think about these things. So as an industrial systems engineer, one of the foundational disciplines you have is not to just build a product, but to understand how the technology interacts with humans. So I wouldn't just like build a machine. It would be, how do I build that machine and what impact does it have on humans? Is it going to make their lives better, more efficient? Is it going to ruin their lives or like their physical bodies? Like, what's the safety perspective? And so I've always had a thought process of, should I be doing what I'm doing even though I can technically make it happen? Now, when you start incorporating your faith and you have a deeper intimacy with God, you start to realize that you can't lean unto your own understanding. It's that this makes perfect business sense. From the business case looks good, you can make money, it will be highly utilized, and still there is a reason that you should not do it, and it may be for a reason that God will reveal to you or not. And so your faith comes in. Well, will you trust God more than you can trust yourself? And I find myself doing that a lot these days, and a lot of times I'm surprised by the answer.
So can you give us a little bit of insight into what actually surprises you about these answers that you're getting?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't know if you've talked to God lately, but he really just gives like like a little bit of information at the time. Like he'll tell you the next step, but not the whole plan. And the next step might seem real crazy compared to something logical. And as a process-oriented person, this is where I struggle the most. It's like, I can create processes for days. This makes sense. I can figure out the impact. And he's just like, no, go to Atlanta. And I'm like, I'm sorry. When I calculate and I do the weights, no, this is number 10 on the list. We have like 9 more viable options. And so I think he doesn't give a lot of information. He just gives you what you need in the moment that you need it. And that is hard to swallow sometimes. There's also the standpoint of, what he says to do. You may not see all the moving pieces. I'll give you a perfect example. I, of course, as you mentioned, live in LA and Atlanta, and those are 2 cities I said I would never live in. LA really because of the, Pop versus Biggie, I was a 90s kid, raised up, that was just my thing. And Atlanta, I just, it was the South, it was such a different culture. And I just remember being like, this is so different from what I'm used to. Growing up in New York, where culture means something different. And yet, here we are. I tried to tell the Lord that I'll never live in Fiji. I don't think he's hearing me, though. But here I am. And I remember when I got out to Atlanta, and when I got to LA, I was just like, this is different. I don't necessarily care to be here. And I was always placed there that when something happened, I was well positioned to show up, to take advantage of it, and to be the person I didn't even know I was becoming. And so I think that's the reason why it's always interesting what he says, because he knows who I'm going to be 2-3 years from now, while I'm steadily here trying to be somebody else. And so we just do whatever he says at this point.
I think one of the things that you're hinting at is, what does life look like for you from a decision-making process when faith and opportunity starts to meet itself? And so when you think about the last 5 years for you, because what folks don't know is that Stacyann took a leap into entrepreneurship in 2020, and it's been up ever since, right? But the process of getting to a point where you're like, I'm going to leave my job to be able to do this, right? There was no opportunity yet, right? You were just like, I need to do this because faith is telling me I should go, right? And at some point, you had to believe that the opportunity was going to come. But in the moments, right, where maybe things got hard as an entrepreneur, what do you think prepared you to be ready for when the opportunity came? And how did your faith really center you in staying ready rather than having to get ready?
Can I tell you a secret?
Absolutely.
Okay, don't tell nobody.
Okay. Everybody about to hear this secret.
No, so I am not as the Lord has spoke to me, and so therefore I follow. I'm not really that's a more David posture. You want me to go fight these people? Yes, I'm going to fight these people. That's not me, right? I think what had to happen is I need some growing pains. And so there were definitely things that were happening in corporate America, I think, that just didn't sit right. And so you start to realize that there's something else inside of you that's fighting what you're doing, and it just doesn't sit right. And it took the discipline of going to God and saying, what is this? Because I am a Jamaican from the Bronx, which means sometimes, not all the time, I have an ego. And so I got to balance that out a little bit as far as, is this me or is this you? And so what I've learned to do in that process is surrender. And we don't talk about surrender often enough. So it's not just that I have this idea, that I have the business plan, and that I have investors. It's now I have to take all of that I worked really hard to get done, and surrender it unto the Lord. And the benefit of that is, when that is your posture and you do that, you tend to, one, attract people who understand your process. I never feel pressed. And I work with founders all day who are constantly pressed by investors and people they work with to produce. And that's not my ministry. That's not my life. We don't do that. Right? But I have maintained and built an environment where I can surrender my thoughts, my own talents and genius to the Lord. And so if there's anything that helps me stay ready so I don't have to get ready, it's being able to surrender.
Okay, so then for the listeners who are trying to figure out what surrender is, how do you describe the process of letting go? And what conditions have to be true in order for folks to get to a point of surrender with their businesses? And the reason why I ask this, right, is because I feel like a lot of times what I've noticed is that there are a number of people who try to control business outcomes, right? And they try to control external environments to produce a certain outcome. And then you start to realize, like, no matter how much control you had over this process or this system or this sales pipeline that you had, if God did not want you to get that deal, if God did not want you to close that client, if God was like, nah, I'm going to break your Salesforce database today, like, it actually can happen. And you have to be okay with it, right? So what does it look like in practice to surrender when you have this idea that you have to control everything that goes on in your business?
Oh my goodness, yes. I cannot believe you would suggest that God isn't only in the part of our lives that's up.
No, God is a part of our lives that is also very down. It's true.
Yeah, so when we talk about surrender, I'm talking about there are certain things that come natural to me, right? So I am steadily doing the work of identifying gaps in the market, of putting products together, of making sure there's a business case, finding investors. And I have to do that work irrespective of the outcome, right? That is just the role that I have signed up for. Surrender, what that looks like is, okay, Lord, I have done everything that I can do. What would you like me to do with it? And I can come to God and say, hey, this is what I would love to do with it. I would love to launch it in this city, or I would like to work with these people. But at the end of the day, I am going to do what you tell me to do, and I am going to move when you tell me to move. And if that means I have to sit on what I believe is a diamond for years, I will do that, because I'm here to serve at your pleasure, not mine. And that's what I mean by surrender. And I can give you an example. There are plenty of ideas that I had right when I was walking Daraja out, right when I built Daraja. I'll never forget it. And because you are people, right? People are just like, oh, you can move faster, right? Which I could. Sometimes, I'll be protective of my own product babies. But you can move faster. But it was important to me that I moved at the pace that God was moving, not necessarily at the pace that I was thinking about things or developing things. And I'll never forget, I was like, you know what? I'm really feeling that it's time to launch this product. Shout out. Entrepreneur's Playground, right? And there was an opportunity where, wow, I was like, this is why these things have been on my heart for the past 2 years. This is why I felt the need to do it this way, because now is the right time to put it together and to put it in front of someone who could invest in it, because the environment and the atmosphere is more susceptible to this. And there's value and there's need there. And so when we talk about surrender, it is like, I am going to do what I am going to do. But at the end of the day, I'm going to move when and where God tells me to move. And because of that, that's going to yield things that I can't even imagine, whether it shows up in the bottom line or not.
Yeah, you know what, Stacyann? I think one of the most profound things that you pointed out in what you just said was this idea of sitting and waiting for sometimes years until God tells you to move. I was, in a previous episode before you came on, I was actually talking to folks about how I had the idea for Behind the Work for a really long time. And it wasn't until now that I was like, let me go and do this. And it was because I was sitting on this balcony in Colombia. And I was like, you know what? Like, I heard from the ocean and from the universe and from God that I should do this in 2025, right? And so I think that one of the things that has been really wonderful to see in your own journey as someone who knows you personally is the level of patience and the level of conviction that you have around not tying time as a factor to when you have to do something. And so for those that are still in the process of surrendering their outcomes and surrendering their ideas to God, who are like, oh my God, this is not moving, quick enough, or, oh, I need this to happen tomorrow. What would you say to them about faith and patience?
Stick to the plan. Right? I think, what gives me the conviction that I have and what gives me the patience that I have, because I'm also a New Yorker, so patience really is not my jam. Jamaican, we go fast for a reason, right? Is the fact that I know God's voice, right? And that comes from being in my word a lot. So knowing the Bible and reading the Bible and the amount of time I spend with God, right? I don't feel rushed. I don't feel rushed. Like, he does not operate in time and space. And even though I do, I have to operate in time and space. Like, he can change anything in an instant. And I truly believe that. And so I don't have to worry about those things the same way that other people do. And as I build my business and as I help build other businesses, I don't worry about those things. And I can't tell you, girl, people ask me all the time, like, what did you do to do this? Right? Like, obviously I'm doing the work, right? But it's like, the outcomes that I have received pales in comparison to what I could even think of. And I think it's because I give enough room for God to operate in my life instead of like holding so tightly that I could only get what I can produce. Now I can get what he can produce, which is far outlands anything that I can do.
For sure. The spiritual maturity that you speak with, I think, is something that a lot of people are working towards, right? I think a lot of people philosophically can understand the concepts of patience, but when it comes for them to practice what that looks like in action, it can feel like a lot of tension, right? It can feel like either God has forgotten you because things are not moving at the pace that you want them to, or it can feel that maybe you don't have his favor, or it can feel like maybe, you're not meant to do something. But I think that one of the things I've learned in my own journey is that, you really do have to trust the timing of God's plan for your life, because anything that has been set in stone for you, it's going to work out because your steps actually have already been ordered. And even though we have free will, we also have the power to listen, right? And sometimes, even in my own journey, I've been thinking a lot about like, what were the moments where I was acting out of fear and not acting out of faith? And what were the repercussions and the costs associated with not listening to God, right? Because you might have gotten to the bag, right? And you might have closed the deal, but if you actually lost pieces of yourself to get there, I don't know that that's what God had planned for you, right? And so my question for you is, how do you make sure that in the moments where things are not moving fast enough, that you don't make concessions that ultimately make you pay a price for something that you shouldn't have done in the first place when it comes to business?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I would like to say God is big enough for all of our feelings, so don't not feel. And a lot of times what we try to do is we'll really be mad at God for something, and we're like, no, but I love you, Lord. And no, I'm mad at you specifically, right? And I think we can just say that. He's big enough for our feelings and everything that we will go through. He knows who we are. And so part of that, being able to stay patient and stay focused, is because I don't have to lose my feelings and I can be real with him. Right. And there's time for that. And it said, blessed are those who mourn. So withholding the mourning that I have by following his process actually keeps me from my blessing. And so the first thing that I would say is I have all my feelings. And I definitely tell God about himself. Not in a like, I'm going to tell you about yourself, but kind of like, I'm going to tell you about yourself. Like you said, I will be the head and not the tail, right? And so I am like actually spitting his character back to him and pleading for his character to show up in my work and to show up in my life, right? And I think that helps me slow down a little bit, because a lot of times what will happen, it turns out that we don't always give God all the credit for what he's doing in the moment. So I might be complaining about this over here, and he's like, but sis, look how you're kept over here. And I'll be like, oh, you're right. So it allows me to slow down so that I can process what's happening and understand, like I can get revelation. And I think the other thing too is, your appetite changes. Like when you start to spend time with him, your appetite changes. I don't care if anybody knows my name or Daraja, but I do care that God gets the glory, and I do care that God gets the outcome that he's looking for. And that shifts your orientation. It's just like, oh, don't you got to be at everybody's tech week every day of the night and be out for 20 hours? I do not. I will not. That's not what we're doing. And so I think once you start chasing kind of like man's definition of success, and you start aligning your definition of success with really kingdom success, you start to move differently, and you start to be patient. Like I understand why every investor wouldn't want to invest in me, because I ain't for everybody, right? And the reality is, if I am the daughter of a king, like I say that I am, everyone wouldn't even have the opportunity to pitch or know that they can invest in me. And so it just is what it is. So I try, girl. I try, but it really starts with me having all my feelings and telling God about himself.
That's really funny. But one of the things you also hinted at too was like the importance of being in your word. And I think that especially in the technology space, we are operating very fast. Like innovation is happening every 33 seconds. That's not an actual fact. I actually have no data to prove that, but innovation is happening like this, with the introduction of artificial intelligence. Like there's just so much going on all the time that, go ahead.
Like, I love this because like an industrial systems engineering degree is all about efficiency and optimization, right? Like it's very core to our discipline.
Yeah.
But for the life of me, Jessica, like where y'all trying to go so fast? I don't understand. People are like, yeah, I need this AI tool because I need a process that. Okay, but why? Like if you can't come up with a one-liner for a post, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I think that what you're hinting at sometimes for me feels like anti-faith. Right? Because with faith, you have to have patience. You have to trust God's timing. And sometimes that timing is not aligning with artificial intelligence, right? It's like, hold on, like you're moving really fast. God is moving really slow. Like at one point in time, can y'all start talking to each other? Right? But I think that in a rapidly changing environment like deep technology, like you can really feel like, yo, I don't even have the time to make space for the word. Like, how do I make time to make space for the word if everything around me feels so fast? And the one thing that I'll say about you that I've always appreciated is that Stacyann is going to take a Sabbath. Stacyann is going to spend 2 hours in the morning with Jesus. Stacyann is going to be in the word, but you are also operating at optimal efficiency as well, right? And so for those that are listening that do not believe that it is practical to be in prayer, but to also be in innovation, what would you say to them?
Yeah, people are going to think I don't work.
Or sleep. People might think you don't sleep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She sleeps,
I
y'all.
sleep. No, what I would say is that your question was there's time for faith and innovation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What I would say is it's all about how you structure your day. It's all about what you prioritize and where you see value. I do take a Sabbath every week because literally stopping gives you a rhythm. And let me tell you, when I try not to take a Sabbath, because there are some days where there are some weeks where I try to do the most. When I try not to take a Sabbath, like my body rejects it. It's just like, what are you doing? Because you move at rhythms. And you know that when you are moving to a rhythm, that actually allows you to go faster, right? And so I think it's important that you prioritize what's valuable. I don't think I need to do everything in my own strength. I just don't. I think that there are certain things that I need to do, and I need to do it very well, and I do those things, and I make time to do those things. And then I make time to be vulnerable to people who can do other things well. So I rely a lot on my team, right? I have a team in LA, I have a team on the East Coast, and they are phenomenal. And I think that we also sometimes we don't know what valuable work is. So for instance, I don't start any meeting without asking people what's their one word for the day.
Yeah.
And it's like, how are you showing up? Because truly, if I'm meeting with my team, if they're not good in their heart and in their spirit, I don't want you working. I don't want you working. One, because I care about you as a person.
Right.
Two, like that may spill over into something we got going on, and we don't need no residuals, right? If you need to talk about the fact that your child is like driving you crazy, or the fact that Future Bay is now X Bay, like let's just give yourself the space and time to do whatever it is that you need to do, so that when you show up, you can do excellent work. And so I think we don't always know what valuable work is. I am meticulous about valuable work. I think building people is the most valuable work that I can do, right? And pouring into people is the most valuable work that I can do. And there have been so many times where I was just like, I didn't get done what I thought I wanted to get done today. And it may have been a team member, it may have been me, and I'm just like disappointed. And the next day or a couple of days later, it feels like I don't even know how I'm producing the results I'm producing right now. And I think there's just time. And so find what work is valuable. A lot of people like to be busy and they be doing the most. You know, we talk about this all the time. It's like everybody who wants to start a business, they be like, Stacyann, so like I got this business idea. I don't want to really tell you about it because somebody might steal it, but this business is gonna rock. And so I got my Instagram handle, and I got my domain, and I got that, and I'm like,
but what are you selling? What is the product?
I'm like, you making money off that domain? Where is the revenue? So I think you got to understand what work is valuable, and for me and the teams, what work is the most valuable is the time that I spend with God and how I pour into the people around me. And then we get to do the work, and it doesn't take all day to do the work, right? Like I can be super efficient in 5 hours.
For sure. You know, one of the things that I think you hinted on, especially when you talked about checking in with your team, is how your faith even informs your leadership, right? I think that a lot of leaders these days, they are a little bit afraid to say, I love God. And I think part of it is because of the backlash that people receive a lot of times when it comes to like Christianity or like religion and what that has meant historically in the world. But I have been an unapologetic Christian at work. You know what I'm saying? And I think for me, faith has informed the way that I lead, because I do one-word check-ins with my team as well, right? Because the ways in which you pour into people really matters, right? And like you said, it is some of the most valuable things you can do, because I can sit here and not prioritize your humanity in the workplace, but you're not going to produce the results that I need you to produce if you're not good, if you don't take care of your heart posture. So what would you say has been the ways in which faith has informed your leadership? I know you hinted at it a little bit, like, but what are some other ways, and why should people who are in leadership who love God be unapologetic about that?
Yeah, I think one, it shows up in the way that your team shows up for you. So I think that my teams go way above and beyond for me, right? Like it's more than the salary, it's more than, like, they're genuinely connected to what they would call goodness. Right? It's just like, goodness. It's like, I know here it just feels good. I feel good when I'm working. And they end up pouring so much more in that space than even other spaces doing the same exact thing.
So that's one thing. And I think it also gives people permission to be themselves. And in seeing people as they are, not what you want them to be, you'll learn how to utilize your team effectively, right? It's like, oh, I notice you keep naturally gravitating towards this skill set of writing, but your current role really doesn't do anything. Is that something that you do? And you get to like see people and you get to amplify them, which helps amplify the team in general. I think for me too, it allows everyone to be unapologetic. So now when I am tunnel visioned, I could be tunnel visioned about like, no, I think this is, the right thing to do. Like my faith allows for correction and for correction to not be offensive. So even if I have someone who feels like they're the junior staff member, they don't feel hesitant to step up and say something because my faith allows for correction and for correction to not be received as offensive, which allows us to work better. And so you start to see some of those things show up in the marketplace, and it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember one time, can I tell the story?
Yeah, please tell the story.
Yo, this is so crazy. I remember one time we were finishing a strategy meeting. I was in Santa Barbara. We couldn't find like a person. And we were like, yo, where did this person go? And so somebody made a joke like maybe the rapture came. And so this is crazy. But like one of my colleagues, one of my team members was just like, yo, Stacyann would be so mad if the rapture came and she was still here. And it was like, it was so crazy because I was like, oh, they really are just comfortable and talking about it and saying it. We're like amongst a lot of universities and stuff like that. It's not a place you would normally see it, but it was just like banter and it wasn't heavy. And I like the fact that your faith doesn't always have to be heavy. Like it could just be there.
Yeah. I think what you are also hinting at that is really beautiful is that because of the fact that you have loved God so openly, there are people that recognize that, and you have no problem in recognizing that there is a God, right? Because that joke actually would not have come about if you weren't unapologetic in your own love for God, And so I think that is one of the most beautiful things that we can manifest in the world is, how we love God. It then informs how we love people, and then how we love people then informs how people love each other.
Yeah.
And I think that in a world where there's a lot of noise right now and there's a lot of fear right now, we need more people centering and anchoring on the Lord. And I want for everyone who's listening to the podcast today to know that you do not have to choose between God and your dreams. You do not have to choose between God and your business. You do not have to choose between God and living a fulfilled ratchet life. Like you could actually have an integration of God and your ratchetivity.
Can I say that? Well, I don't.
I mean, like ratchetivity. You still gotta be full of faith.
But can I say something? Because now I'm about to say something controversial.
Okay, we love controversy.
Do we? Okay, all right. So I gotta say this mainly to my believers.
Yeah.
Like I need us to walk out the principles of the faith and not necessarily the traditions in which we were raised under. Because one of the things that I think people miss, and I know we're talking a lot about being unapologetic, is like, I'm also not shoving the Bible down anybody's throat. I am literally loving without expectation.
Yes.
Because that is the greatest commandment, to love God with all my heart, all my mind, all my strength, and then to love my neighbor as I love myself. And so in just doing that, I don't have to shove the Bible down somebody's throat, shove my interpretation of the Bible down somebody's throat. And so I need for those of us who are claiming Christ right now to really lead with the love that is actually in the Bible. And I know we don't want to talk about that a lot, but it's something that we do need to talk about, because there's going to be a lot of people that encounter a business before they encounter a church, and they really need to see the love of Christ and the love of God, not what we believe they should be acting or doing. And God will handle the rest, right? We don't need to be that person. So that's just my thing. As we are being unapologetic, let's be unapologetic about the things that are actually of Christ.
And at some point, we're going to have a conversation about why that would be controversial.
Yeah.
I actually thought that wasn't controversial at all.
I mean, but look at the world. Look at the world we're living.
In the world that we live in, that is a little controversial. But I think also, one of the things that really resonates for me is like, when you are a believer, right, and you live your life a certain way, you don't have to shove the Bible down people's throats, because they're going to feel and experience God in you and with you. They actually don't, like folks that are still on a faith journey trying to figure out where God fits into their life, like, by being around me, you're gonna feel it. You know what I'm saying? I don't actually have to read scripture to you. I don't have to shove the Bible down your throat. You're gonna feel it from me. And I think that one of the things that has been very prominent in my own life right now is that there are folks that are on a faith walk trying to figure out whether or not like God is real, and whether or not they can choose between having a good business and being faith oriented. And I'm always just like, why can't you have both? Am I not a manifestation of what that looks like for you? And for some folks that I have actually asked this question to, for some folks, they'll say like, yeah, you might be, but maybe I'm not.
Oh.
Right? And it gets me back to this place of like, God, like there are people that believe that God has forgotten about them and their dreams and their importance in the world. And that actually makes me really sad, because it makes me feel like there are folks living and walking that are spiritually deprived. And I think that those that are believers that lead with judgment, like they actually don't make the conditions better for folks that are still on this journey to operate and feel confident in that there is a God out there, and that God also loves them as well.
Yeah, I would just encourage those people that may feel like that may not know whether God is real or God has forgotten about them. I would encourage you just to give the Bible a chance, because you will see over and over again that God picks people that man would never pick to do his greatest work. And that's fact. Right? And so this notion of like, you have to be perfect, or, you have to, we should strive, right? We should absolutely strive. But, one thing that God revealed to me like a couple of years ago, and I was just like, I was saying the same thing. I was just like, oh my gosh, I messed this up. And is this why this is not happening? Forgive me. Right? And he was just like, you didn't live up to your perfection, but you did to mine. Right? And so there's nothing that he doesn't know. And so I would just encourage people, like, when you have any question or doubt about who he is or what he will stand by, go to the word. I'll be feeling great. I'm like, well, I ain't a murderer, so like, let's go with that. Right? So, yeah, just, he's way bigger and way more loving and way more creative than we could ever be.
That's beautiful, Stacyann. All right, so let's talk a little bit about The Daraja Collective.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Right? Yeah, let's talk about it because it has been a company that you started, and Faith has been one of the driving forces behind it. And so, tell the audience what is Daraja and what your vision for the company is.
Yeah, so Daraja is actually Swahili for bridge. And so I really believe that we can bridge the gap between where ideals are born and the resources and technical expertise to get those ideas to market. And that's what Daraja is. So we do accelerator programs across the United States and Canada to really give people the opportunity to get to their next best move with the ideas and technologies that they have. Now, this is playing a little bit at the top of the funnel. You know, everybody is about secure the bag, okay? Like this is what they tell me. They be like, Stacyann, I got an idea. And so I need a VC investor I'm like, relax. Okay, everybody take a beat. It's like, what about this idea? It's a long journey. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times we don't know what we need. A lot of times we don't understand the market. And we're there at the Daraja Collective to help organizations who help founders understand what you need to be doing next. Right? So that you can get to a place where you enter the market in a sustainable and profitable way. So I'm excited about that. We have amazing accelerator programs going this year. We are also working, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're making me say this. Why would you do that, Jessica?
Because it's called accountability. When you want your friends to do a thing, you record it.
I think it's just because she's from Brooklyn. Like,
it might be because I'm from Brooklyn, but at the end of the day, Stacyann is gonna do what she's put out there in the world. So
yes. Okay, all right, you're right. And so we're also working on a generative AI tool that helps to assess the maturity of an idea or startup, and not from the sense of the standpoint of, oh, you get an A or you get a high mark, and so therefore you're investable. It's more so like, how do I know where I need to fill the gaps based on the information that I have now, and how do I have better conversations in the marketplace with people who can help me. So we have that generative AI tool coming out. And then we have our community that is both going to be in person and hybrid, the Entrepreneurs Playground. Jessica knows I love to play. I am such an unserious person and I'm a big kid. And so how can we create these environments where entrepreneurs can dwell, because we're so busy trying to do another thing that we don't realize that there's a posture we have to have that's going to sustain us over the multi-year process it takes to bring an idea to market sustainably and profitably. So that's what we're doing.
That's amazing, Stacyann. And so, you know, my last question for you before we wrap this up is, when you think about the 10-year vision for Daraja and you think about what you're hoping God helps you manifest into the world, what would you say that is?
Ooh, that's good. You trying to put this on tape. Wow, it'd be your own people just setting you up. So I would love to design a process in which monetization happens at value creation and not revenue generation. That's a lot of big words. But how can we tie money to when value is created, and then how do we create a process that is accessible so that people with the technical expertise and the ideas can opt in and out of the innovation and commercialization process. They can do so in an equitable way, right? And so when I say that, think about the engineer at a tech company. I almost said a specific company. I don't want nobody to get in trouble. But think of the engineer at a tech company that really, even though they have 40 hours at work, they could probably do their work in 25 hours. And they're like, I just want to work on something dope on the side, but I don't know a way to contribute my skills to something dope that's happening. I don't know what's happening, and I don't know how to do that. We want to build the process for that to happen. So just give me 7-10 years or whatever, completely disrupt the game, and then we'll be on to the next one.
Yes. Well, you know what, Stacyann? Honestly, as one of my greatest friends in the world, I just want you to know that I'm extremely proud of you. I'm extremely proud of the way that you lead. I'm extremely proud in the ways in which you center Christ in all of your decisions, not just in life, but in business. And I also want to say thank you so much for generously sharing, your tips and tricks and just gems with the world. I think this is such an important conversation because I do see a trend in our universe right now where it feels like folks are very spiritually deprived. And I really want to see a world where people lean into their faith a lot more, to trust the process a lot more. And I think that the conversation that we had today is going to enable that. And so thanks for being on the podcast. Are there any final words that you want to share with the audience?
Have fun, y'all. It's okay. The world can be heavy, but God is not. So, keep him with you.
The world could be heavy, but God is not. That is a gem. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Make sure that you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then also follow us on social media. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Behind the Work. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating and a review. Follow us on YouTube and on social media. I want to hear how this show is leaving an impact on you.